Here's the gist of John Wick Hex. Released in October 2019 for PC and Mac with console ports in the works, this single-player bird's-eye view strategy action game was developed by BitHell and published by Good Shepherd Entertainment. An official prequel in the Continental continuity of the John Wick series of films, Hex's plot revolves around the Baba Yaga himself on a contracted hunt to assassinate the kidnapper of Sharon and Winston, management of the Continental Hotel. If you didn't follow any of that, I don't blame you. This game's story requires plenty of context best attained through seeing the trio of films for yourself, despite taking place well before them in the Boogeyman's prime. If you have seen them, you'll be pleasantly surprised to hear the familiar voices of Lance Reddick and Ian McShane reprising their movie roles, and doing a damn fine job at that, especially when matched against the dulcet tones of Troy Baker as the antagonist. Enough formalities, however, let's get to the meat of this beast. On the surface, Hex may appear to be an AP-operated grid-based shooter along the lines of, say, XCOM, and you wouldn't be completely off base in that assumption. You click on dots in order to move towards them. In fact, the game is nearly completely controlled with the mouse, with keyboard keys mostly serving as camera controls. However, rather than being turn-based, this title operates on a time-based system. The game is paused by default, with time only progressing when the player takes an action. Every move you make takes a set amount of time displayed cleanly at the top of the screen in a line. For instance, every step you take costs 0.4 seconds. This is also true of your opponents, which you'll of course be facing in droves in true John Wick fashion. Enemies' timelines will be placed underneath your own as they attempt to move and execute moves, and all forms of combat will play out in multiple stages, the white bar being prep time, i.e. cocking a gun or putting yourself in prime position for a sneak attack, and the pink bar, or bars, indicate the actual damage taking place, as in firing or striking. The catch is, generally speaking, damage interrupts damage. So, if an enemy is about to fire their weapon at you, being quicker on the draw, indicated by if your attack will occur prior to theirs in the timeline, will stumble the enemy, canceling their attack. However, this system is not without flaw, as enemy timelines will not appear until enemies, well, actually begin their actions. No negative latency tech in this one. So if you're choosing to begin an action that takes time, which as far as you can tell will execute well in time to complete on the timeline, you may be interrupted by an enemy entering the visible play space, which pauses all actions, or an enemy simply attacking more quickly than the timeline may have suggested. On top of this, some actions will take focus energy, such as rolling, dodging enemies, swiftly parrying their attacks, or tactical and typically lethal takedowns. Now, not all attacks consume focus, simply striking your foes or firing your weapon for instance, but running out of focus in combat will leave you at a significant disadvantage, as it takes a considerable amount of time to take the action of refocusing. And finally, ranged combat considers other factors such as accuracy, ammo, and weapon type. Thankfully, these numbers are clearly displayed on the buttons for any actions for which they're relevant. Being crouched, for instance, increases your accuracy as well as your chance to dodge incoming fire, while attempting to shoot a moving target, on the other hand, will decrease your hit chance, but this also means staying on the move yourself will let you dodge and weave through bullets Matrix style in true Keanu fashion. Speaking of, Wick is tricked out by default with a custom handgun containing one spare magazine, which takes quite some time to reload. This is in contrast to all other weapons you'll find on victims of any targets who carried guns in their life, which cannot be reloaded. While you can only carry one firearm at a time, empty guns can double as projectiles in their own right, being chucked in the faces of foes to deal minor damage but effective stuns. Annoyingly enough, you cannot extract magazines from guns of the same type to bolster your own supply. If you have a 9mm pistol, picking up another 9mm pistol will make you drop your current gun and all the ammo inside of it, meaning after you run dry on your custom handgun ammo, you'll be juggling guns for the rest of the map. Maps, by the way, contain a set of linear levels. Before maps begin, with a few exceptions, you'll be given a set number of Continental coins to purchase upgrades for yourself or dead drops of supplies, such as bandages to heal yourself with. Any leftover coins won't be carried over to the next map, and upgrades purchased will always be reset, so I found myself experimenting with the bespoke tailoring to see what best, well, suited me. Each level is static in nature, with fog of war clouding your vision in the distance and beyond corners. These nooks and crannies are filled with randomly generated and sometimes guaranteed enemy spawns, with doors being used to create new foes, sometimes indefinitely. While there's not really anything wrong nor stand out about the level design, one late game mission consisted of a straight corridor filled with doors of infinitely spawning enemies, which may be the least fun I've had in a game in years. This level reveled in the fact that it was unfair fair, but it doesn't make it any less horrible. But anyways, enemies may vary in type, but they all share the same common, terrible AI, which gives them omnipotence to your location and has them charge straight at you until they're within lethal range, walking in circles or back and forth around pillars like dogs chasing their tails. Regardless, different types of ranged enemies will carry different calibers of firearms, such as handguns, shotguns, SMGs, or assault rifles, whereas brawlers and martial artists will instead charge directly at you and are focused on melee combat. This usually means you're best off shooting at those who can shoot back and parrying brawlers as they draw near. Levels typically end by finding the exit, which can only be used if no foes remain nearby, meaning you're best off leaving no survivors so stragglers won't prevent your escape. And one of the final levels in every area will more than likely house some kind of boss, enemies with plenty of health and focus to go around, whose actions cannot be cancelled by being shot. You'll need to rough them up first to deplete their focus and fill them with lead while they're weakened. And at the end of every map, you'll be scored based on how fast, using in-game time, you completed the map, how many different kinds of weapons you used, accuracy, etc. Doesn't serve much of a purpose as far as I can tell, aside from striving to reach a high score, so that's all good in my book. All the while, stylized comic book-esque cutscenes will play to dictate the plot to you, as the majority of the game is being told in the past tense. While on the subject, I should talk about the art style, as this is where some of my problems with the game begin. Don't get me wrong, low poly and bright colors are an aesthetic I can totally get behind. However, when paired with janky, simplistic animations and repetitive sound design, which isn't always correctly synced to your moves, it's hard to ignore how unfinished Hex sometimes looks and feels, especially considering how many bugs and glitches plagued my experience. Movement actions would sometimes fail to take place while still progressing time incrementally. 100% hit chances would miss regardless, enemies would shoot me clean through walls. I once had the game soft lock on me, refusing to let me take any action aside from restarting. And most importantly, the replay system. Okay, so a slow methodical strategy game may not be what one expected in a John Wick title, as opposed to a first-person shooter of some description. However, actually planning out your moves, taking down hordes of mooks, going from firing a gun to empty to hurling at a nearby enemy, parrying an attack, weaving past bullets, and performing a tactical takedown, it feels like instead of playing as John Wick, I'm playing as a stunt coordinator for the films, and honestly, I'm completely okay with that. However, the replay feature is clearly intended to showcase the final result of your choreography, playing out in real time and giving you automatically generated camera angles. And when this system works, it's superbly satisfying. However, more often than not, this feature crashes and burns. The camera jarringly jumps around, clips into walls, and moves far too quickly. Ironic given how good John Wick films are about using as few jump cuts as possible during their fight scenes. Due to the game being on a dot-based hexagonal grid, any movement in a straight line relative to the map, as in down a hallway or corridor, will show Wick ping-ponging back and forth in an unnatural serpentine pattern. The basic and repetitive animations grow tiresome quickly. Seeing the same punching animation back and forth over and over and over is hardly a good watch, and most importantly, this system often just breaks altogether, either getting stuck in some wall far away from the action, or even having John Wick freeze in place, unable to perform actions while the camera zooms further and further away. Instead of showcasing how talented the player is, the replays instead highlight how alpha the game looks and feels, as if one of the game's cutscenes simply refusing to play at all visually, just showing me a black screen the whole time, wasn't enough of an indication. That's not to say I'm completely unimpressed though. As I mentioned earlier, the voice acting and plot make for an interesting treat for those who like the cinematic crime-averse of John Wick, and the music, while a tad repetitive, has the right pacing and energy to make the methodical gameplay feel just a little bit more action-packed, I suppose. And considering, at $20 with around an 8-hour-long campaign and levels designed to maintain replayability, not to mention Hex itself being a rather creative subgenre of strategy game in its own right, I don't exactly regret my purchase as both a fan of John Wick and puzzlers. However, if you're not already a fan of both of those things, Hex isn't gonna sway your opinion. The story doesn't make any sense without having seen and paid attention to the movies and their lore, and the gameplay, while novel, is so clunky that you may not wish to put up with it long enough to get your $20 worth. If the animations are repolished, the replay camera reworked, and rather game-breaking bugs addressed, I would gladly recommend this title to lovers of both John Wick and strategy games. While not exactly making you feel like Wick, it does make you think like him, and that's enough for me. Otherwise, consider John Wick Hex to be excommunicado. If such patches are released, I'll be sure to make a note of it in the description, and while you're down there, maybe you can consider subscribing, or or following me on Twitter? Just a thought. Either way, thanks for watching and take it easy.